Welcome to Legacy Engineered, the show where smart structure meets lasting success. Join Scott Arden, Chairman and CEO of Controllers Limited, as he sits down with business leaders, top entrepreneurs, and experts to uncover the strategies, stories, and structures that build lasting legacies. And now, here's your host, Scott Arden.
Welcome back to Legacy Engineered. I'm your host, Scott Arden. Today, we're joined by a true pioneer in the world of neuroscience and human performance, Dr. Patrick Porter, the creator of BrainTap. For decades, Dr. Porter has been at the forefront of brainwave and entrainment technology, helping millions of people reduce stress, sharpen their focus, improve sleep, and unlock higher levels of mental clarity. Through BrainTap, he has fused cutting-edge science with practical tools that empower everyday people to take control of their mental well-being. His work is more than innovation, it's a mission to elevate human potential and leave a meaningful mark on how we understand and optimize the brain. Dr. Porter, thanks for being on Legacy Engineered.
Hey, thanks for having me, Scott. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I know that, you and I know each other through various different communities, and I'm actually myself, my team are a user of the product BrainTap, and we actually bought one for the office. We bought an iPad for the office. And so, not only are we users, so we highly endorse it, but, definitely wanted to talk to you a little bit more about your why, if you will.
That's great. Well, I think more companies are going to start having brain breaks instead of just coffee breaks. The brain needs to be recharged too, and it doesn't happen through the biological system. I mean, we can get a lift, but we all know that if you do it with sugar and caffeine, that you're going to have that downward trend too. So you're fixing your brain at the core, which means you're bringing energy to the brain. So I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have to ask you, what was the original vision behind BrainTap, and what gap in human performance or mental wellness were you determined to solve?
Well, I had another company. I was actually part of a team that started this whole industry back in '86. It was called Light and Sound Research, and we created the very first one. And our whole goal was to help people to de-stress and get out of pain. This was before opioids. And then opioids came along, and they weren't so interested in finding out a non-pharmaceutical version. We've since done a study in Brazil, though, where opioids are only prescribed for 4 weeks of use. And so we did a study where everybody had this surgery with the university down in Florianopolis. The people using BrainTap at the end of 4 weeks all stopped using it. The other people are they're still using opioids. I have a saying, you can't have the pill without the skill. So what happens is the brain started patterning after the pill. So it wasn't the brain can do its own thing. Pain only happens in one brainwave state, beta. And if you can get the person out of that fear, that fight or flight, that stress response, their pain level naturally goes down and the body stops sending the signal. So what we're finding, and then evolved into building a franchise where we worked with addictions. I ran that for 27 years. When I sold that, I thought, I was just going to go off into the retirement age, and wasn't retirement age at the time. That was back in 2002. But I thought I'll just go out and do some public speaking. I was making enough money off the company because I had a royalty arrangement. And then 12 years into it, my sister called me and said, "Hey, Patrick, you better get back to work. They're running this business into the ground." And we were in Fortune magazine. We were one of the fastest growing franchises. It was doing great, but the people had a different way of thinking. And Cynthia and I, when we started Positive Changes, we said, we're going to help people and then make money. A lot of people say they're going to make money, then they're going to help people. You can't have that kind of mentality in this business because there's too many people that can't afford your services, but there's a lot that can. So we never let money stand between us and helping somebody. We figured out ways to do it with trade, barter, other things. People would put in time and energy, but some people just didn't have the money. So we built that up, and we built a pretty good business. Our average clinic back in the 90s and early 2000s would do $1 million to $2 million, and we had 108 of them. And so it was doing a really good business, and they changed the model. They started just looking at the money, because we were also running that company at 25 to 30% profit. So it was a very profitable business. Before the internet, really. We didn't use the internet marketing, any of those things. We used old school. But then when Sarah called me up and said I had to do that, I said, well, this technology that we helped to create, there were 6 of us. I was the only one left standing by that time. I was their researcher back then. I didn't own the company, but there was a series of events, and I got the technology because that company didn't know how to run their business either. And when they went out of business, I went to the factory and said, "Hey, I can sell all these. Don't trash them." And he goes, "You're going to sell all these?" I was only 24 years old, and he said, I said, "But the only agreement is because he owned all the rights because they didn't pay him." I said, "If I sell all of these, I want you to turn over all the plans, everything you have in this, and sign it over to me." Well, I sold everything in less than a year. He was amazed, and we did it through selling through doctors. And so what we did, I said, "Well, I've done it before. Let's do it again." I know a lot more now than I did back then because I was just stumbling around, not knowing what was happening. So I went out to the chiropractic community, and luckily for me, a person named Fab Mancini was running Parker University.
Yep.
And he's a very open-minded young president, youngest president actually of a chiropractic school. And I had to explain to him a little bit about how we do neurological function, and we would be a perfect fit for chiropractors in building what we called chiro spas. Well, between him and Carl Parker, who's the son of the founder of Parker, we went out and started launching it. And I got 500 to 600 clinics going really fast. So money was never a problem. Because there are so many people that need help. And then it grew and grew. Now we have 3,000 clinics using BrainTap, and we have 120,000 users in the BrainTap ecosystem. And I don't have to worry about making money. I mean, we make money, but you're always worried about, taking care of that money. But the reality is that we're very low cost for most people. And our whole goal was to better, at first, 1 million people's brains. Once we passed that mark, I said, that million was just not big enough. And
right.
I was at a seminar, they got to have this big, hairy, audacious goal. So I
Set the bar higher.
Yeah. I said, we're going to better 1 billion brains. And somebody said, you can't get to 1 billion brains here in America. I said, no, we can go in the whole world. So we're in 120 countries now. We're getting ready to open up India. We have one study that just happened, because we're trying to prove it out now, not just in pain and whatever, but a lot of people know about neurofeedback and they're really high on it. But the problem is neurofeedback costs the end user $4,000 for 40 sessions. And I would say 99% of the time, 40 sessions isn't enough. It just doesn't do it, and it doesn't stick. So we were fortunate. Nimitz Hospital did a study, and she's one of the leading providers of neurofeedback in the world. This hospital is the largest psychological hospital in the world. They see 200 new patients every day. And so they were doing neurofeedback, but they could only see 10 of those patients every day, because with neurofeedback, you have to have a practitioner and the neurofeedback device. So she said to me, we met at a conference over there because we do a lot of research with Ames Bhopal, which is like MIT of India. And she came to one of the lectures. She said, "What do you think this would do with neurofeedback?" I said, "Well, I can tell you because I have 3 pieces of neurofeedback in my lab, and we use it to show people." I said, "What we know is that if you do neurofeedback, you're going to stress out the brain. And yeah, they're going to be able to move their brain waves, and it's going to be cool while they're doing it. But it's like going to the gym. If you don't go to the gym, eventually you're going to go right back to the way you were. You got to keep going to the gym." I said, what we can do is, after they do the neurofeedback, do a BrainTap session. Let's see what happens. So with the first study, we showed that what they could accomplish in 40 sessions, we did in 15. And then she said, well, what would happen if I just did BrainTap? So we found out, not using neurofeedback, we got the same results in 15 sessions. So what was doing it, the neurofeedback or the BrainTap? So we're going to India, and now there's 3 school systems using it in India. We've proven that we can raise the whole GPA of the school. We're doing that right now in Seminole College in Florida. We already did it with the golf team and the soccer team. They have the highest GPAs in the school. We're now doing a school-wide GPA study, just with the app, not with the headset, because we have a headset that goes with it. And we're showing that they're improving their grades, they're sleeping better, all of these things. But in India, we can get to those billion brains because the government, hopefully, is deciding right now as we're speaking that we're put on the list ahead of neurofeedback for clinics. So the government will actually pay for them to put it into these facilities and use it because we've proven it in science. I always tell people, you don't have to believe me. This is science. Save your belief for Sunday morning. This is truth in science. And we showed the main thing that the listeners need to know is that your brain, when you were born, Scott, you had the best brain possible. It was probably operating at 18.1 volts. You had a 100 billion neurobit processor going. Your neuroplasticity was through the roof. You could interpret the world around you, learn languages, and by 2 years old, you're like a little adult running around. And nobody took you to school to do that. You learned it all through actually what we call genetic memory, because your mom and dad are inside of you all the way back in time. They've now proven that now, by the way. That's not a foo-foo, woo-woo thing. our neuroscientists said that 7 generations are actually influencing us on a DNA level. Now, the Hopi Indians said that 100 years ago. They said 7 generations are guiding us. So I don't know how the Hopi Indians knew it, but now they're saying 54 generations. I think by the time they're done, they're going to say that all that information from your parents, when you were conceived, when they were conceived, all that information gets passed on, just like when you change right now as you're sitting here. Most people don't realize this, but you've died 1,000 times or more because the you that started this presentation here, this podcast, is no longer with us. At a rate of 50 million cells per second, you're losing them and you're gaining new ones. This also happens in the brain. So when you think the mission, when we go through life, when we're stressed out, worried, eating poorly, not moving, then we have something called neuro pruning, which means the brain has to start disconnecting. And that happens since the moment we were born. By the time you're 21, your brain is at about 10.5 to 11 volts. If that drops below 7, you now have dementia. If it drops below 4, you have Alzheimer's. And we proved it in a study in Florida with Dr. Kelly Miller. We took a group of women, 55, 65, non-meditators, vegetarians, all these things that people think you need to do. And we said, don't change anything, but add BrainTap 3 times a day. Within 6 weeks, every person in that study was off the dementia scale. That's now in a larger study because the pilot study, and there's actually a book called Saving Your Brain. It talks about the whole protocol and everything. But what we're doing at the college now is we're going to get it up to 100 and we're going to publish that paper. And they're doing it right now. They have 86 people. And as soon as their voltage got above 7, they no longer had dementia symptoms. So it's a voltage equation. So our main mission is to raise the energy, the vibration. I always say change your frequency. So if you can think with me just for a moment, your frequency is what you frequently see. So if you're a positive person and you look at life as a challenge, we now know that your DNA, who you are at a cellular level, upgrades. If you look at life as a threat, we know scientifically it downgrades. It makes your body function worse. So the best thing anybody listening can do is become more positive. Get rid of those negative thoughts. But the problem is, Deepak Chopra said this, what you think today, you thought about yesterday, 90%, and that same 90% probably a month ago and probably 5 years ago. So that's why we also use positive psychology, because we need to change that tape loop. If you look at life as a challenge, remember, it upregulates. So whatever's happening to you today, that's your trials. That's to build your superpowers. So just to give an example, then we'll move on to the next question. If you're an alcoholic, let's say, and you use BrainTap or some method to become alcohol free, you now have a superpower. You can say no to alcohol. So, now you want to share that with the world. That's what they do when they go get a sponsor. They become a sponsor and they help other people because we have a propensity to help other people. That's why I believe we can get to 1 billion brains. We just have to get to the right number of people that can influence those numbers of people just to realize that we're not meant to degrade over time.
Right.
And your listeners, listen closely. There's never been an ancient culture that kept the wisdom of the tribe with the youngsters. They kept the wisdom of the tribe with the elders. So we must be doing something wrong in our lifestyle. That we're putting the elder people into old folks' homes. We're not talking to them. We're not communicating. We're not giving them community. We're not sharing their story. So we're losing the wisdom of our tribe because they're being put away in homes. And I believe that's part of the equation too, is to reintegrate them back in the family. Just like if you have a dog and that dog's getting older, if you get that dog a puppy, they've proven that it lives almost 5 years longer.
Yep.
So what they're doing to these older people is they're separating them, and they should be around the grandchildren. It used to be the grandparents that would raise the children because the ones working, they didn't have time. So the grandparents have much more patience because I didn't have patience with my first children. And now with my grandkids, my son goes, "You never let me get away with that. What do you because I was stressed out too. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't go to parent university. I went to, here's your kid, raise them.
Yeah, absolutely. I find that with my granddaughter as well, is having a lot more patience and and being able to really articulate and explain things and and educate, if you will. And so I have kind of seen that. That's just amazing. That's awesome. I love that. So as you look at the growth and impact BrainTap has created, what accomplishment or milestone stands out as the most meaningful to you?
Well, I think the most meaningful for me is when people say they can now sleep again, because 2/3 of the world isn't sleeping. And if you think about it, when you sleep, that's when your body actually, prepares you for the next day. But one thing the listeners need to understand, if you could go back in time with me to 2015, every physiology book in the world, the lymphatic system, which is the garbage man of the system that detoxes the system, there's only 4 reasons your brain isn't functioning right: thoughts, traumas, toxins, or technology. And we can get into all 4 of them if we have time, but what I'm talking about is toxins. So what they found out, imagine 2015, every physiology book in the world, they didn't know how the brain detoxed. The lymph system stopped at the neck, every one of them. But in 2015, during a sleep study, a doctor noticed a region of the brain, parts of the brain that activated. It wasn't there before. It activates only during level 4 sleep. And when it does, that's when you detox. With 2/3 of the world not sleeping, they're not detoxing their brain, which means you're going to have foggy brain, you're going to have sluggish thoughts, you're not going to have energy or motivation, you're not going to be able to process. So sleep is really important. So I think that's one of the main things. But then the other is just the accomplishments people have. The sports ones stand out because they scream the loudest. Like, we have 8 world champion, either they're boxers, UFC, they're in some sport like this that they're doing where their head's getting concussed every day. I mean, they're getting beat up. It's a terrible sport, but we help them. And I remember when one of them got on the Joe Rogan show and talked about it, our internet, they almost broke our internet because he's got such a following.
I would imagine, people just like shut the servers down.
And then when you think of people like in football, when Tom Brady's group came to see us and said, "Hey, Tom's using the BrainTap, to help him in recovery." He used it when he was with the New England Patriots. He's still using it. He has 2 jets. He has 2 of them on his jet. And, and when he gets people on there, he shows them, hey, you don't have to have jet lag. Because I proved out, I have a whole research project where I showed if you land on an airplane, you've lost up to 70% of the energy of your body. That's what jet lag is. It's really light lag. So I showed him, I said, just do a BrainTap session when you land and you'll be right back to where you were. So no jet lag. So, and then of course, weight loss, we were featured in People magazine. We have tons of people that lost weight. And the main reason for that, if the listener's going, how do you lose weight putting this on your head? Well, it's because of stress. Most people don't realize how our body works. When you have stress, whether you're just sitting at your computer, you're driving down the road, you're looking at your cell phone, you're not working, but your liver houses 25 grams of sugar and it dumps it into the bloodstream. At that moment, there's no place for that sugar to go. You're not moving. Your muscles are already full of sugar. So what happens is insulin has to be released into the body. That insulin is a fat storage hormone. What it does is it tells the body, start storing all this sugar in my bloodstream, and where it stores it, you don't want. The adipose tissue, the back of the arms, gut, and all these places. And what happens then is after you get up and have to do something, there's no sugar available. So now you're starving. And then the whole cycle starts again, and they call it insulin resistance. So this is the first thing anyone on a diet needs to deal with is their stress. If they don't deal with their stress and get sleeping better, those are the 2 things that I'm most proud of that we do. That's what we do in our sleep. We do that every day. If there was one comment I get everywhere I go is, look at my sleep score. I'm in the 90s to 100 sleep score on the Oura Ring or whatever, because we're teaching them. I jokingly, when I'm on Dave Asprey's stage, who's the king of biohacking or whatever, the guy who founded it, I always say from the stage, I will challenge anyone in this room to do your sleep protocol. I will do whatever I want during the day, but just before sleep, I'm going to do BrainTap and I'm going to beat you. And I said, those of you in the room know, 75% of his people have BrainTap. So I said, you know that you get better sleep scores the days you use BrainTap, because it's not about all those other things. It's about how do you prepare your brain and body for sleep. And so we teach people how to do that. So I think those are the things I'm most proud of. And our doctors, they're on the front lines helping so many people. Every day, they might see 10 to 20 people a day at those 3,000 clinics. And then they have people using it and sharing it. And I think, our average user uses it 27 times a month. And we only have 4% of all the people that have ever joined quit. So they must be getting some value. Like you, a lot of them will get it for their business after they started using it, because what's better, to have you're going to get tired. And for the listeners, our body is cyclic. They call it the circadian rhythm. But what MIT showed was that we pull codes from the universe. This is not science fiction. This is true. If I could take, Scott, your DNA, staple it to the floor, it would extend to Pluto. It's a viscous material that's wrapped around your body. And its whole job, MIT about 6 weeks ago came out with a study that shows that it pulls in these codes, and those codes get put into the body to tell it, this is nighttime, it's time for sleep. That's why when you go to sleep at 10 o'clock, you make more melatonin. If you don't get to bed by 11, you don't clean your liver. All of these things, they're not your conscious mind. You don't go, okay, it's 10 o'clock, let's make more melatonin. Or, it's 11 o'clock, I need to clean my liver. This is all done through your biological system in tune with its environment. Your environment is so important. And guess what? All that DNA is doing every 40 seconds or so, it's rebraiding your DNA every 40 seconds. You are changing not only 50 million cells per second, but every DNA pair is changing every 40 seconds. So when the ancient rishis said, hey, that river out there, that's never the same river. If I go swimming in it today, I go swimming in it tomorrow, that's a different river. There's different water, different fish, different sediment. The same is true with your body. You never wake up in the same body, but the problem is people wake up with the same attitudes, the same beliefs, the same memories. I call them dragons of the past because people drag them on and drag them on and drag them on. Imagine if I was Superman and you were Lex Luthor and we meet for the first time and I say, Lex, look, this is kryptonite. This is what makes me powerless. I'm not going to do that, right? I'm going to take that kryptonite, put it in a lead box, put it in a vault. I'm not going to tell Lex Luthor about it at all. But people go around all day long telling people all their woes. Forget it. You're never going to solve the problem by talking about it. You're going to solve the problem by taking action about it. So I think one of the best things I can tell you is people say, you know what? I don't think those negative thoughts anymore. I look at life as a challenge now instead of a threat. I know that I have a better capacity in my brain than I did before. We weren't taught these things. In school, we were taught what to think, not how to think. Right. So it's so important to think about your life in a different way. Whatever's happening to you right now, good or bad, it's your learning. It's your lesson. It's your time to evolve. And that's why we tell people, don't meditate, evolve. Because we've scanned 30,000 brains. We've only met less than 5 people that knew how to meditate. And these were people that
truly meditate.
To truly meditate. Yeah. And we can test that because there's something in the brain called the default mode network. The Dalai Lama actually calls it the monkey mind. So if you're the kind of person, you close your eyes, you start thinking all these negative thoughts come up, all this busyness comes up. That's because you haven't learned how when you shut your eyes, 30% of your brain goes dormant. The blood flow to your frontal lobe, which is the thinking brain, gets diminished. The same thing happens when you're under stress. So your body doesn't know what's happening. Your eyes are closed, you're sitting there, that's why you need a teacher or you need a process like BrainTap to train the brain, because inherently we only close our eyes when we're resting or we're taking a nap or going to sleep. But when you're just sitting there for 20 minutes, for some people it feels like an hour or 2 hours, and they can't do it because their mind's going crazy. With BrainTap, it can seem like a minute for 20 minutes. Sometimes it can seem longer, but the whole thing is, you probably experienced it, we call it island time. You hear the beginning, hello, this is Dr. Patrick Porter, and then you hear eyes open, wide awake, hey, what just happened to me? And I always tell people, don't worry about it. The message wasn't for your conscious mind. If you could consciously make these changes, you wouldn't need this device. The problem is that 95% or more of your life is controlled by your subconscious. And what I mean by subconscious, I like to call it the other than conscious mind, because it's not sub at all. It's superconscious. Imagine a computer that can monitor 75 trillion cells every second of every minute of every hour of every day. It knows how to keep the blood chemistry perfect, because if your blood chemistry goes out of balance, out of that pH balance, you're dead. And you put in whatever you want and think the body's going to do it. The body is like an alchemist. It can take total crap for years and make a body out of it. But eventually the body's going to say, you know what? I can't do it anymore. Right. So your bones are going to get brittle because it needed minerals from the bones because you weren't eating good mineralized food. You didn't drink enough water, so you're dehydrated. So maybe your kidneys go out. You get pains and aches in the body. This is all because you didn't give the master builder the building materials it needed to build the body that you're going to have. And the old saying is, if I knew I was going to live this long, I'd have taken better care of myself. So we always tell people, you have to think like the shaman. A shaman would say, I'm going to live my life like it's my last day on earth. So what would you do with your family? How would you love them? How would you take care of them? How would you treat the world if you knew this was your last day? But plan your life as if you're going to live forever. Because I didn't get a return ticket. I don't know about you. They didn't tell me when I'm going. And still the biggest main cause of death is a heart attack. And the first sign of a heart attack is death. There's no sign. You think
Right.
you're doing great. You're out mowing the lawn, you're playing with your kids, you just get out of bed, you take a cup of coffee, boom, and you're dead. So we've got to build our body and keep it going because our body needs us. We don't really need our body. When you die, your body's going to be there, and everybody at a funeral knows you're somewhere better. That body is going to decompose and go back into the earth or whatever it's going to do, but you're going to go on because you started from somewhere. You're going to go somewhere after. I'm not sure what that is, but they did measure it. I don't know if you know that. They did an experiment where they measured people dying in comas, and the average person died and lost 3/4 of an ounce. Where did it go and what was it?
Right.
So we're not these physical beings. We're the electrical spark that animates this being. Because when you see somebody who's dead, when my mother died, I'm like, that's not my mom. It didn't look like my mom. It was her body, but she didn't look the same. She didn't have that glow in her cells, and she was alive and vibrant.
This is the vessel, right? We're just it's the soul, the inner being that is what is in this vessel. Absolutely. And with all the distractions out there with technology, cell phones, gaming, all of this, I mean, you got to figure probably the majority of the population isn't truly getting good REM sleep to be able to activate these things you've been talking about. Yeah.
Right. And you need to know there's not just one brain. A lot of people think about this brain between our ears. That's more like a Google tablet. It transmits and receives information. In fact, there's little cilia on the brain that work as an antenna. And just 4 weeks ago, MIT came out with a study that showed the human thought extends 10,000 miles away from the user and goes into a web of information like the internet. Can you imagine that? MIT said that. So their consciousness is being unraveled through science. So if you think about that, now there's a heart brain. Most people don't realize you have 40,000 neutron cells in your heart that work like a brain, coordinating and speaking twice as much to the body as the body does to it. We also have a gut brain. This is where all your neurotransmitters are made. So if you're not sleeping at night, because the brain waves, when you go through those brain waves during sleep, it instructs the body. So for those that know science, when you go through and you're in beta, it's dopamine. That's why there's all these addictions. And dopamine never rewards you. It basically antagonizes you. It's an adjutant. It makes you fired up to do something. But I tell people it's kind of like when I was in college and we'd be in the dorm and be all fired up because we're going to go to the bar and we're going to meet that girl and we're going to dance or we're going to do whatever. We would fantasize about. And then we get to the bar and it's like, is this it? It was much more fun getting ready than it was getting there and having to perform. So that's what dopamine does. Now, when you drop into alpha, you create something called acetylcholine. Now, there's 54. I'm not going to go through them all. But acetylcholine is that when you fall in love. So if you and I, Scott, were to go sit by the ocean, our brain would be tuned into the ocean because it's a bigger body than we are, and it has a 10 hertz, what they call potential. So it's pulsating in frequency at 10 hertz. The Earth itself has a 7.8 hertz frequency, but the ocean, water, and we're up to 70-80% water. So we start resonating like if we had two tuning forks, and I had a 528 tuning fork here and another 528, and I ping this one on the table. If I hold it up, this one will start vibrating. I don't even touch it because the waves get it. So every cell does that when you're in alpha. Now, if we went to the mountain, when we go to the mountains and we're at 7.8 hertz frequency, which is the Schumann frequency, that happens to be theta. Most people don't have enough theta. That's why they don't sleep. But when you're on that mountaintop, it triggers a neurochemical called GABA. GABA is the most researched neurotransmitter because they think if they can bottle it, you cannot make enough. At night, if you get a good night's sleep, you have dumped $20,000 to $30,000 of neurochemicals into your system. You can't take enough pills because the greatest pharmacy on earth is not Walgreens or Walmart or all these other places. It's the human brain. It can create 30,000 different neurochemicals with a thought. So when you're in GABA, it's a precursor to something called DMT. And for those that know psilocybin or ayahuasca and all these psychedelics, what they do is they trigger this activation of GABA and DMT, and people have these spiritual experiences. So we did a study actually in Dallas with vets with PTSD, and we were doing it as an integration. But before we did it, some of the vets said, "I don't want to do that psilocybin. Some people don't want to do it." I didn't do it at the time, so I didn't know what it was. So I said to Dr. Rosenthal, who is the one running the study with us, I said, "Let's map some brains of people on a psilocybin." And what we noticed was they had high levels of GABA. This gamma. And when it organized, because the brain, these electrical frequencies organize in the brain and they kind of build on each other. I tell people it's like cicadas. And when they're in the forest, one starts and then another one starts. Pretty soon you got the whole group going. That's kind of the way the brain works with these brain waves. And what we did was, after we mapped these brains, I created a series. Now we have over 500 sessions with gamma on our sessions, and people are having a psilocybin trips with no psilocybin, because it's not the psilocybin that's doing it. It's your brain's reaction to it. The brain knows how. So when we drop into delta, that's what makes serotonin. That's the happy-go-lucky neurotransmitter. So if you're not sleeping and going into that level 4 sleep where you're cleansing your brain, you're not getting all that serotonin, so you wake up sluggish and not motivated. But all those neurotransmitters are made during sleep. And the brain doesn't make those neurotransmitters. The gut does. So when somebody says, what do you think is the number one brain? I don't tell them this one. The number one brain is your heart brain, because it coordinates and communicates twice as much to the body as the body does to it. And the gut is the second brain, because if you were in a spinal cord accident, you would still exist.
Right.
Your body would still go to the bathroom. You just couldn't use your limbs because the connection between your thinking brain and your body is gone. But all of the autonomic system is still working, because that's being controlled by your gut. That's why health is so important. And we always say, for gut health, you have to eat right, because you can't think a bad diet. You have to move and breathe, so you make something called BDNF. This is brain-derived neurotropic factor. We call it miracle growth for the brain. That's why when you exercise, you become more positive, right? You've probably known people that were very negative. They started working out, eating right, and they become this positive, optimistic person. It's because they weren't poisoning themselves all day long with a bunch of sugary sweets and maybe drinking colas all day long and just chasing some kind of fabricated reality that said you can eat whatever you want and build this body. But the body's going to build on what the materials you give it, unless you're an alchemist and you can somehow transmute these foods into some magical body. The builder can only use the materials and blocks that you give it. So every meal is a chance to regain your brain health and your body's health. And the number one thing, though, is water for the brain. Most people don't realize at night when you sleep, your brain shrinks 3/4 of an inch every night. And the worst thing you can do is get up in the morning and have a cup of coffee. Coffee is a diuretic. So now you're going to dehydrate even more. So what I tell people is, have your coffee 2 hours after you awaken. You should start the morning with 1 to 2 glasses of water and put mineralized salt in it. And you can buy that at the store. It's the full spectrum salt, not the iodized table salt. It's like the Himalayan salt or the Celtic salt. Just put as much of that as you can stand, because we don't have enough minerals. And salt is not a bad thing. Most people, in fact, the reason they're telling you not to have salt is the exact reason you need salt. It's so weird. They're telling you the exact wrong thing. But interesting. You want the table salt. The problem is you do not want table salt. It's kind of like fats. They tell you to avoid fats. But the reality is that you have to have the omega-3 and 6 fats, or your brain is fat and water. So if you don't have those omega-3 fats, your body can't build. It doesn't need seed oils. So those are bad. So they're saying everything about oils is bad. No, like avocados, olive oil. In fact, if somebody's out there wondering if they're going to get dementia, one of the best things they can do for dementia is drink or have 1 tablespoon of olive oil every day. And the way I recommend they do it is on one of your salads, whether it's at lunch or dinner, whatever time you have your salad, instead of putting salad dressing on it that's full of sugar and junk, take olive oil, as much as you can stand on that salad, use Italian seasoning and salt and pepper, and that's it. And if you do that, you've just reduced your dementia risk by 40%.
Wow.
Okay.
That's good to know. That's
and if you drink half your body's weight in ounces, you've just reduced it again. I don't know if they add up 40%. And then the other thing that they found, 39%, if you can create a community. If you're out there, not online community, I'm talking about you get together with people, you either are helping them, your family. That's why the tribe, what did we used to do? At the end of the day, we didn't go into our huts and turn on the internet, and play games.
There's a congregation, get together, talk about download. Yep.
Yeah, everybody downloaded for the day, and then we stood in front of a fire. This is important because that fire was a biohack. They didn't know it was a biohack, but have you ever been mesmerized by a fire? Like just sit there on the outdoors?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
I'm just mesmerized. Well, that fire, all fires flicker at 10 hertz frequency. So they put you into an alpha. They downregulate the nervous system. But that fire is also emitting infrared light. our body, you're generating infrared light. That's why I can see you, why you can see me. So we're sharing this light, and our mitochondria loves that light. So when we're by that fire, we're actually getting energized. And most people don't have the energy to sleep. Just like they say, my kids are too tired to sleep. Most adults are too tired to sleep. But we don't need a Snickers bar. We need light, sound, and vibration. We need energy to sleep. And that energy, the way light energy works, so the listeners understand, and this is just a short version of it, but your body's hemoglobin is designed. It does this every day without me telling you this. It's already happening. Depending on any lights you have in the room, your body's absorbing that light energy as a photon. It's circulating through the body. And when it finds a cell that's about to die, they call apoptosis. That cell, like a magnet, draws into it that energy. When it does it, it starts something called the Krebs cycle. This happens all the time when a cell is born. But when it gets that light energy, that Krebs cycle starts, that cell returns back to its natural instruction set, like it's brand new. And it starts spitting out 32 times more ATP. So ATP, for those who don't know about it, is a molecule in our body that everything we do eventually becomes ATP. It heals, it restores, it energizes the body. So if we can bypass all the digestion and get that right into the brain, we do that through blinking lights in the eyes and through the ears. That's why we have it in the ears, because all the blood in your body goes through your ears, and then it goes into your brain. That's what regulates the temperature of your brain. So if we want to get this energy into the brain as quickly as possible through the ears, you can also go through the nasal channel, but we found that people didn't like to do that.
So sticking it up their nose.
Yeah, they have little, you can still sell them. There's a Bylight you can put on your, I have one I travel with, because if I can use it sometimes on the airplane, although it looks kind of funny. If I use the one that's red light, if I use the infrared one, nobody knows what's happening. But the red one, you kind of look like Rudolph. You know, your nose turns red and when you're losing. But this that's a one good way to get, your cranial nerve or the nerve for your nose. That's the first nerve that's grown in the brain when you're in utero. So it's the most powerful way to get into the brain.
Interesting. Did not know that.
That's why if somebody's out there wondering, do I have Alzheimer's? If you have peanut butter in the house, go open up that peanut butter. If you do not smell that peanut butter, you're 5 years away from dementia. It's time to start doing something right now. That's one of the tests they give you in neurology. So it's a simple test. People go, that's weird. And they'll find, I don't smell that peanut butter. And what happened during COVID? People lost their smell, lost their taste, because it was affecting them on a neurological level. So it was disconnecting our neurological system. That's why it's so important we get it back as soon as possible.
That makes sense. This is all awesome, super valuable information. And, you actually, I had a whole series of questions, but you covered every single one of them without me having to ask you. And so that is awesome. Now, because this is legacy engineered, I have to ask you this question. Many innovators hope that their work continues long after they're gone, right? And so how do you see BrainTap contributing to your long-term legacy?
Well, what we plan on doing, because our company is pretty good valued right now, but eventually it'll be valued. We believe it's going to be $1 billion company at some point, and we are already planning on setting up a foundation to run the company. My kids, they're not in a position to do it, but I want to have it. And what I'm doing to make sure that I stay involved is I purchased 88 acres to create what we call Brain Camp, something I can do until I die. And people can come out, spend a week at Brain Camp, and we can show them through science and technology how they can improve their brain. So instead of going off, you can always go on those other vacations, but where can you go for a week, supercharge your brain so you can have the rest of your year, ready to go? And that's what we're going to build at Brain Camp. And my whole idea is to find other people that will replace Patrick, that can do it, because I think the technology isn't dependent upon me. That's the nice thing. I always tell people, like, especially the doctors, I said, I'll be at work every day because I'm recorded. All you have to do is plug me in to press play and I'm there,
Right.
And we've been doing this for 40 years. So I don't see that it's going to stop. I mean, I don't see stress diminishing in the next, 20 to 100 years. So,
definitely not.
And we're really working on innovating and changing school systems, because our school system hasn't changed since the 1800s. At Quantum University, where I'm the Dean of Brain-Based Medicine, we converted their whole Doctors of Medicine program into not only lectures, but BrainTap sessions. And we're teaching people in 2 years what used to take 4 years. So we can change our school system and get people smarter because we teach them how to think, not what to think. I think creativity is a lost art. and problem solving is something they leave up to other people. They turn on the news to see if they're having a good day or not. And by the way, if you are too happy out there in the world, there is a solution. Just turn on CNN. You'll be miserable within 5 minutes. You want to focus on the positives. So I think my legacy, and this last book that I wrote called the Brain Fitness Blueprint that Hay House just published, that's kind of the first start of it. But I'm going to write several books about that are niche books about that, because I think brain fitness is going to become like physical fitness. I don't know if you remember, Scott, you might be too young, but when I was growing up, the parents actually petitioned the school to stop us from having a gym with weights in it. They thought that it was going to stunt our growth, that if we lifted weights, we would build muscles and stunt our growth. Now, obviously, that would be ridiculous today. Everybody knows you need to lift weights and be healthy, but that's the way people think. And so I think brain fitness is going to have its day in the sun, and it's just going to become ubiquitous. Everybody's going to, just like everybody has a TV set. It might not be the BrainTap, but they're going to have some kind of brainwave entrainment that tunes you, because just like tuning a guitar so it plays the best notes, if you can train your brain and tune it, it can play its best notes and can give you your best life. But you have to tune it. It's not going to do it on its own. And if we let society do it, it's going to go crazy. So I think my legacy is going to be, when they look back, they're going to say, this crazy guy that back in 1986 started doing something that nobody had ever heard of. Imagine going to the market like I did. There was no cell phones. There was no downloads. And I'm telling people, put these flashing lights on your head, listen to these tones, and you're going to change your brain. We couldn't even measure it back then. There was no neurofeedback. There was no EEG machines. We used what they call GSR machines. We measured the skin's response to stress and your heartbeat and your hand temperature, things that we do, they call biofeedback. We didn't use neurofeedback. There was no neurofeedback. Right. And then neurofeedback comes along now and proves us right, because we were getting a result. People were sleeping better back then. They were thinking better, but it was a big hard sell back then. Now it's a little easier because of technology, and a lot of people know about lasers and all of the energy medicine. Even x-rays are energy medicine. So they understand that the body is electrical. It's, there's something called the electron transport chain. That's how every cell works. If you get that, it's the electron transport chain, which means it's electrical, which means we're light. We are literally light beings. We might look like we're blood and guts and vomit, but the reality is at the cellular level, we are energy. And if we keep that energy up, so if we get that if we keep that energy up, in fact, there's no reason we should age the way we do. We age, you look at the presidents. When they go in as old men and go out at senile. But before, you'd have a president that was 45, 50 years old, but they leave office, they look like they're 70 because of stress. So if we can learn how to build our capacity to handle stress, you're not going to get rid of stress. When somebody says, hey, I want you to get rid of my stress, I always tell them, I got my wife has a t-shirt that says, God only gives you as much stress as you can handle. He must think I'm a badass. So,
I say that all the time. I say that all the time. I'm like, wow, he must think I'm a badass.
Right. That's right. So we build capacity for stress. We can't get rid of stress, because the more successful you are, it's not less stress. I had less stress when I was struggling to try to build a business, because I'd go home, there was nothing I could do. I mean, I could just chill out, go for a walk, do whatever. I had a lot of free time. I didn't have a lot of clients. I had a lot less stress. The more successful you are, you have to learn how to manage that stress and give yourself downtime. Be gentle with yourself. And if they want to learn more, of course, they can either go to BrainTap or they can get the book, Brain Fitness Blueprint. And I spell out a 30-day plan to start maximizing your brain function. I mean, it's easier than you think. There's a saying, spirit is simple, man is complex. Some people make it too complex. And if you think about wellness and sick care, we have a sick care industry. In fact, I can't tell you how many people said, I'm coming to you because my doctor said I'm not bad enough yet to do anything. I have to get worse so they can do something. I said, no, you don't have to have a breakdown to have a breakthrough. The best time to start working in your brain is while you have one. If you wait till you don't have one, it's going to be hard to get it back. So wherever you're at right now, whether you're 5 years old or you're 100 years old, your brain can get better because you're making it better. Just like if you're going to the gym, you make your body better by physical exercise, by breath work, let's say, by taking good company, all these things that you can do, eating well. These are all things that we do, but if you do it with the purpose of staying healthy and young and vibrant, because as Wayne Dyer said, never let an old person inhabit your body. I always tell people I'm only 64 years young. I have a lot of life left in me, and I'm not willing to go into my wheelchair or my rocking chair and just watch the sunsets and sunrises. I want to play with my grandkids. I want to run around and do things. 60 is the new 30 now. When I hear my kids that are 40 go, "I'm old," I go, "Give me my 40-year-old body back." I'd love to have that. Nobody likes what they have, but we got to honor what we have so that we can improve upon it and make it better.
Absolutely. Well, Dr. Porter, thank you for joining us on Legacy Engineered and sharing your insights, your breakthroughs, and the powerful mission behind BrainTap. Your work is transforming how people around the world think, heal, perform, and live. We appreciate the legacy you're building and the impact it will continue to make for generations to come, and we're honored to have you here. So for everyone tuning in, if today's conversation with Dr. Porter inspired you to think differently about your future, your well-being, and the legacy that you're building, now is the time to take action. Whether you're ready to protect your assets or structure your business for long-term success, visit www.controllersltd.com and schedule your complimentary strategy session. Your legacy deserves intention, and we're here to help you engineer it. I'm Scott Arden, and this is Legacy Engineered, where we teach you how to design, protect, and pass down your legacy for generations to come. Thanks, Dr. Porter.
Thank you, Scott.
Thanks for listening to Legacy Engineered. For more episodes and to connect with Scott and the team at Controllers Limited, visit controllersltd.com. You can also follow Scott on Instagram and LinkedIn and start building your legacy with confidence today.